Welcome everybody in to another Nice Job live chat brought to you by Engage. It's real-time social proof for your website, and you can get it absolutely free from NiceJob. So what are you waiting for? It's a free tool, help your conversion rate. It looks nice on the website. It's amazing. Engage by NiceJob there. Now today, this chat in particular could be the most requested topic we get regardless. So if we put out a poll and say something like, what would you like to know about? This is what comes up. Whether the question is that, or whether the question is, what are you happy about? What are you sad about? What do you want for dinner? Somehow, this always comes up, and it's SEO. There is so much to learn about it. In fact, the hardest thing about SEO might be trying to be the definitive ranking of what is SEO because there's so much information out there. So you know what we do on this podcast. We find the expert that has the answers, that can explain them in a way that is clear, concise, and actionable. So I am ecstatic to welcome Andy Allen, CEO of Hike SEO, to the podcast today. Andy, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Sean. It was a great intro.
Yeah, thank you. I worked as hard as I could on it, but also I really am talking truth here when SEO is a question that we get a lot at NiceJob. We get a lot anytime we go to small business owners, anytime I've been speaking or about. There's a lot of SEO questions. And it's because SEO in its own right is a pretty complex topic in the terms of you can kind of understand it and you kind of can get a handle on it, but it doesn't ever mean that it'll be 100% you're going to nail it every single second. It's a process. It's always evolving. It's always kind of changing. So I think it's good to talk to someone like yourself who not only, is doing it through Hike SEO, but is kind of studying kind of on the front lines of it. So if we'll start at the beginning with SEO and not so much just what it stands for, but, if you wanted to kind of get the grasp on what SEO can do for you at a high level, where do you start? Like, how do you put that out there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I was actually just speaking to one of our users just beforehand, and I like to use an analogy because people always like, it's PPC and SEO. Because people think about the Google search results and they think, well, and then ultimately, really, the two ways you can be visible on there is via the SEO elements, which will be your regular organic listings. It might be your Google images. It might be within the Google map pack. It might be within the news results. It might be the voice search, right? Because the voice search is powered by SEO. And then on top of that, the other real estate is taken up by paid. And people are like, well, why should I go for SEO over paid? And the analogy I like to use is kind of like buying versus renting a house. It's like you need to live somewhere, right? You need to live in a house. It's like you need to drive traffic to your website. And then there's two routes. You can go down the paid route, which is great. It's going to get you into that property straight away. It's going to get you on that first page straight away. And whilst you're paying, you're going to be there. And you can pay for 1 month, you can pay for 12 months, and you'll be visible. Price typically only ever goes up, which kind of happens, I guess, in the real estate market and in the PPC world. But as soon as you stop paying, it doesn't matter how much you've paid, you're out of there. You're off that first page and you're out of that house. With SEO, it's almost like you're putting equity into the house, right? You're paying the house, you're paying off that mortgage, and you're building up that equity. And, it takes a while to save up that deposit for a house. So it takes a while to get, up onto that first page of Google. But once you're there, if you've invested that money, and, it's actually into buying that place, which is like SEO is, then as soon as you stop those payments, which you can't, this is where the analogy kind of breaks down a bit, but as soon as you stop, you retain that position, all other things being equal. And it's so important for a brand because SEO drives, it drives it's the biggest driver of traffic of any channel, has been for a very long time and still is. If you look in pretty much any brand's analytics, take anyone with, 99% accuracy, SEO, organic traffic is going to be their biggest driver of traffic. It's so important for a brand to get right. And, people always, I think that's why people's appetite is so whetted by it. They're like, well, how can I get myself there? And more people now just understand the importance of it. Whereas 5 years ago, I don't think they did. Mm-hmm. They understand it's so important. And really, since lockdown, since COVID, coronavirus, it's just become more important. Like the demand now for luckily for us guys, for SEO software and for SEO agencies and for people wanting to learn SEO, it's just skyrocketed because it's almost as accelerated this going online. There are so many businesses now that realize I have to be online. that 3-year, 5-year period, which would have took those businesses 5 years, it's been condensed into 5 weeks. I have to come online now. So yeah, all these factors just makes SEO always such a topic that people want to talk about.
Yeah, it's become a kind of, I think a lot of people have heard about and understand the importance, but maybe don't get the nuances within it. And so when you talk about, SEO or PPC, it's not really an either or. Probably the best benefit is a collection of both. But just to kind of go on the SEO side of it, that general, finding those rankings. There's kind of either an on-page and an off-page. And I kind of want to talk about on-page SEO first and kind of really how to describe that. Because that's just a big factor in NiceJob's convert sites. And again, the whole point of the convert site is once they're on your site, converting them into leads and sales, not letting them go, like prevent them from being a fleeting visitor. So can you take us through, basics of on-page SEO and what kind of things you can expect if you have someone that's doing that for you?
Yeah, sure. So like anyone that's thinking of doing SEO, just start on page. You might read guides, blogs, hear podcasts about how important link building is, how important citations, how important Google My Business is. All those things are really, really important, but you have to get the foundations of your website right first. So you have to start with on page. Otherwise, all that work you're doing just isn't, you're not going to have the impact that you want to if your website's just not well optimized. In terms of where to start, so the first point of call really before you kind of do anything is you just need to identify your keywords. So what are the phrases that your customers are using to find products and services that you offer? And it's as simple as that, right? I always say to people, the first port of call should literally just be sit down with pen and paper and just write out every product and service that you offer your customers. Because what you really want to do is you want to find out, okay, for each of those products and services, are people searching for them in Google? And if they are searching for them in Google, what type of language are they using? What kind of nuances of language are they writing? Because you can make assumptions thinking, people are probably looking for this product by using this wording, and you can be really, really wrong. It's quite, that kind of keyword research is quite a cool insight into your customers' minds. So just start with your keyword research, and that really impacts your on-page SEO, right? Because that will then determine, okay, what kind of content you're going to create, what website structure should you have, what landing pages should you have? Because if you've got a list of 50 keywords, right, there's no point having a 2-page website because you're never going to rank. Google's never going to rank you for 50 keywords if you've only got 2 pages it can possibly serve to the searcher. You'll need to create dedicated pages for each of those. So that keyword research is important. Then when you're like, right, okay, so I need to optimize these keywords, you've got the foundational elements, which have been important since day dot when it comes to SEO. So your meta elements, your metadata, so your page title, still one of the most powerful SEO elements you can do. You can edit, right? It power's in your hands there. Make sure you've got your keywords in your page title. You want to update your meta description. You want to make sure you've got a nice meta description that will drive traffic through. Bear in mind, sometimes Google can pick the meta description for you, but try and create something that's catchy and it's nice. Headings on the page, again, has always been important, always will be important. It's how Google determine. Google's an algorithm, right? It's a set of rules to understand what's important about a page. It needs to analyze a page and go, what kind of content should this rank for? And it looks at the elements that us as humans do, right? If I look at a newspaper, I look at the subject line of the article and I go, well, this is what the article is going to be about. Should I read it or should I not read it? And then that's kind of what Google does, right? With headings, your H1, your main heading, this is what this content's about. That's what. So you want to make sure you optimize your headings, your actual content itself. You want to be looking at optimizing that. There's lots of things you can do there. You can get really deep into the weeds of different content optimization techniques, but it's kind of your basics. Make sure you've got good amount of content on the page. It's unique. It's long enough compared to your competitors. You're not creating this really short page. You're mentioning your keywords. You're mentioning related topics. You've got a good amount of headings and subheadings on there. You've got images. Your images are optimized. You're using good alt text. Google can understand the content of an image, so make sure it's relevant. They're optimized for size, so it's not taking too long to load. Yeah, these are kind of the basic elements that you really want to be looking at from an on-page point of view.
And it's great when I talk to the convert team, is that's how they see a website. And the general public a lot of times sees the how cool a picture looks or what color the font is, things like that. But there's so much on websites that's kind of on the back side of it that can be confusing at times, but that's why some experts are out there that can kind of help you out. But talk about keyword research. And I want to get into kind of how you could go about doing that. But the first thing I usually say to people is, well, you're probably already doing some keyword research and you don't quite know it. So when you go out on a sales call or make a sales pitch, you might even ask the question like, well, what are you looking for today? You're looking for window clean. And chances are that answer is the same exact thing that they would have typed in to find you. So like, I need my windows cleaned, so clean windows or, window cleaner, kind of build out on that. But beyond that kind of initial, that's how I tell them to kind of break down the barrier that's not scary. But beyond that initial, person-to-person research, what are some great tools either that you could recommend or some strategies to begin some keyword research to find out, what phrases, what word keywords that you should be hoping to rank for?
Yeah. So strategy-wise, I think talk strategy-wise before kind of tools or software. You want to be thinking about the buying funnel, the sales funnel, whatever people like to call it. So you want to think, how can I attract my customers that are in different stages, the awareness stage or the purchase stage, or the stage in between, middle funnel, top funnel, and try and think about, okay, what are the types of questions what are the requests my customers have got for each of those stages? And you'll, in really good point, right? You'll get that from those, those calls, those customer requests, those customer reviews, all that customer interaction, because, so for example, for us guys, right, we have a do-it-yourself SEO platform. Now, right at the top of the funnel, there might be, our ideal customer might be going to Google and searching, how do I get more traffic to my website? That's the first thing. They don't know that they need us or SEO or anything at this point. They are literally going, how can I get more traffic to my website? And then they'll go away and they'll read a few articles and they'll learn about maybe PPC, SEO, social media, whatever, your referral email. And then they'll come back and they'll go, okay, right, I want to learn a little bit more about SEO. So like, okay, how can I improve my Google rankings? And then they might read something there and they go, okay, I need an SEO software, I need an SEO agency. They come back to Google. All the time they're refining their search, right? And ideally, you as a business, you want to try and be present at each of those stages of the funnel. Each stage is going to have, completely differently in terms of their conversions. We're probably not going to make any sales from someone searching how to increase traffic on a website, but someone that's searching like SEO software for a small business, then they're at a point where they really want to buy. So that's the kind of first thing from a strategy point of view, is think about that kind of sales funnel and what your customers are asking, because you want to be present, throughout as much of that as possible. Then in terms of, actually using software, or using tools, like I mentioned before, first write down, all those products that you do. Then you want to use some software or some tools to actually like confirm, okay, what's the relative opportunity of these terms? What's the competitiveness? Because that should dictate as well what kind of keywords you should go for. So, for example, if I'm a brand new website, I might think that I really want to go for the phrase SEO, be at the top for the phrase SEO, because it's got, I might look then and go, actually, it's got 100,000 people a month searching for it. That's quite a lot. I'm only a small business. I probably don't want that many customers. Or also, it's really, really competitive. I've got a brand new website. I'm probably not going to rank for it, right? So you want to start to learn what's the relative opportunity size and the competitiveness, because it has to be a bit of a, you have to think about them in tandem, really. And that's where you need software. So you might use Google AdWords tools, free software. You might go to Google itself. There's free plugins. Keywords Everywhere is another great one. You can use paid software. So for example, something like Hike or other SEO software will give you this information, right? They'll show you, here's some keywords, here's the relative volume, the difficulty. We'll even show you what your competitors are ranking for. That could be a really nice strategy, because sometimes they can find some keywords that you didn't even think about. That's the keyword they're going for, and I bet our customers are searching for. That's a brilliant idea. So yeah, there's loads of reach you can go, but I think as a top level, I think just do those kind of basics and you're onto a pretty good start.
And that strategy of looking at your competitors' keywords, or just looking generally at what might be a harder competition, or a harder word to compete for to rank versus other ones. What is your general opinion on the strategy of, if you find some of those that maybe not as competitive, and taking some of your advertising and some of your other, media that's out there and starting to educate the public on that word in general. And so one big one I always hear is that there's some of our users are power washers, some are soft washers. And I was talking to one in particular, and I don't want to say he told me not to say the name's name, but he wants to try to rebrand what he does. And it's the same process, but it's to rebrand what he does. And part of his reasoning for that, he's like, he thinks he could own that. So for example, if he changed it to, blubber washing, he feels like he could get that. I'd love to get your opinion on that type of strategy of you want to compete, because some people are like, hey, I'm a carpet cleaner and there's so many national carpet cleaners. Like, I'm just trying to be my local best. Like, if you're trying to dominate your local market, should you worry about how competitive a keyword is, or is there other strategies you can take? But what about that notion of you can advertise what you want people to search for?
Yeah, I think it's almost like the idea of like Inception, isn't it? You're planting the search into their brain before they do it. I think if you're going for a keyword, even locally, the competition is always going to be lower, right? Like, local SEO is a great place to start for anyone doing SEO. Even if they do provide a service nationally, can they divide that down into local regions? Because when you try to compete locally, you're only up against a much smaller subset of competition, right? If you're up against nationally, pressure washers nationally, you're up against hundreds, thousands of companies, right, trying to dominate Google. If you're trying to do it in Vancouver, you might be up against 20, 30. I don't know how many pressure washers are in Vancouver, but
yeah,
right. There's but you're up against a much smaller subset. So competitiveness is still something to take into consideration, but not so much. It's relatively not as much when you're compared to nationally, right? You want to be looking at still the size of the opportunity. Are people searching pressure washers, soft washers? What language are they using? That's really, really important. To understand what's the exact phrasing they're using to find your product or service, right? That's still super important. You might see that pressure washers, pressure washing company, there might be a difference threefold in the amount of people searching either one. So if you're going to put time and effort into your local SEO, go for the one that's going to get you the biggest return, right? Probably going to be a bit more competitive, but hey, it's going to get you a much bigger return on your investment. In terms of keywords, I think that's important. When it comes to local SEO, there are like some specific strategies and other areas that you can look into. I mean, we can touch upon those if you want, Sean.
Yeah. That's kind of generally what I was going to lead our conversation a bit, is like that local SEO. Like, how do you? Okay, so I'm forgetting about the national guys, but I still want to be found by people, quite honestly, like where I can service. So I want to find my local town, the Alexandrians, my service area. How do I get about that? How do I focus on my local SEO?
Yeah, sure. So a good place to start, I guess, is to understand what you can impact. So if you go to Google first and search pressure washers Vancouver, or pressure washing company Vancouver, whatever the keyword may be, you'll notice there are two distinct elements on the page. Typically, in most scenarios, you have the map results, right? Mm-hmm. So just below your keyword search, you have this box with a map showing you all the local businesses, and then there'll be 3 businesses underneath. Right. Now, essentially, those 3 businesses are in a really good spot on that Google results page, right? They're the top 3 businesses. It's got their phone number, it's got their address, it's got the amount of reviews that they've got, which, is an increasing ranking factor, as we can touch upon. Obviously, NiceJob really helped with that. And then under that little, we call it the local 3-pack, you then got your regular Google listings. Now, they're important as well, right? You also want to be in there and try and push up there as much as possible, because some people don't always click on the maps. Some people would rather go to websites. So you've got these 2 distinct elements. So if you're a local business, you need to think about both. Now, how you do SEO for both of those do differ slightly. There are some factors that kind of overlap, which is great. It means what you do for one will assist you in your appearance within the other, or your visibility within the other. But there are some specifics to each of them. Now, the top one, which is where you got the maps, that's driven a lot by your Google My Business listing. Mm-hmm. So what appears there, what's got your address, your phone number, your business name, that's not being pulled from your website. That's being pulled from your Google My Business listing. Mm-hmm. So first off, you want to make sure you've got a Google My Business listing. You've created it, you've optimized it as much as possible, right? So there's lots of different things you can do. Again, you can do this yourself. You can use software like Hike. You can use Google. You can go away and do research, but you want to optimize that listing. So you want to make sure you've assigned the right categories. You've got lots of images in there. You've got FAQs. You're doing Google posts. You are really making sure that just like you optimize your website, that listing's optimized. And you want to get that high. And then, so that's all driven by Google My Business. But then the bit underneath it, that's your local SEO, let's call it, like your actual organic listings. That's to do with your website, right? So like I spoke about earlier, it's about finding those good keywords and optimizing those really important on-page factors. So your titles, your meta descriptions, your content, adding your keywords in, making sure your site structure is correct. They're the two bits that you want to be thinking about as a small business.
And that Map 3 pack and the Google My Business, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something that will get a lot of attention, but you kind of touched on it, might not always drive the most clicks. Like it definitely will in a sense, but you wonder a bit, especially if you're in an area that has a lot of national chains. I know, like if you're in metropolitan areas or near larger cities, is sometimes that map gets so cluttered because you click through, I'll just use like a pizza place, an example. You're trying to find like a Pizza Hut. Well, there's 12 Pizza Huts in your general area. And so one might be the closest where you are, but is it the one you want? And so that's extremely important. You definitely want to be there. If you're not there, you're in trouble. But having time to follow after that. But the Google My Business, we at NiceJob, we can post your reviews. Obviously, it goes through Google My Business, but if you attach a photo review, it adds more photo. I would love to touch on like adding content to your Google My Business and how that helps, because some people, they kind of set it and forget it, so to speak. But if you use it actively, that helps obviously for the map pack, but it's got to help kind of overall in getting you found, if I'm not mistaken. What can people do with their Google My Business they maybe aren't doing that would absolutely help them?
Yeah, so just add in frequent images. Add in images. There's a bunch of categories you can add images to. And you want to make sure you've got images in all of them, and then you're adding images. Something's important when Google sends you an email saying, hey, we think you should do this, right? They'll do this every now and then. Like, whenever they want you to do something, they'll leave these subtle hints. And then what they also do is they give it like a little SEO boost, because they know if they get the SEO guys doing it, it will then filter to a lot of the websites. So, you'll see now you'll get images from Google saying, like, you've not added any images recently. Add some images. So you definitely take that as a real strong, hint and nudge. Add images, add profile, cover images, interior images, exterior images, images of your team, images of your logo, and just really try and keep that. You might feel like, I'm just adding images, but it's kind of what Google wants. And you're going to get so many images in there because, you're going to get user-focused images that are going to be added to it. And some of those probably won't make your business look as beautiful as it might possibly be. So you want to kind of counteract that by adding as many beautiful photos as you can, right? So images really, really important. Do that. Reviews. Make sure you're responding to every single review. Again, this is something Google asks you to do. They tell you to respond to every positive review. And this is something that, not all businesses actually know they need to respond to negative reviews, which is nuts, but do that first, right? That's kind of first port of call. But make sure you're responding to your positive reviews. Google will tell you to do this, is important, but just from a user point of view, if you see a business is really engaged, even with their happy customers, straight away you're like, well, this is a good business. Their service is going to be really, really good. That's really, really important. So reviews is another good one. Google Posts. This is something that's kind of underutilized. And again, this is something where, Google telling you to do it, then you probably should try and give it a go, right? So they're like little mini blog posts that you can add to your Google My Business listing. You can talk about what's new at your business, any offers you've got running, any events that are coming up, any new products that you're launching. And they sit like a little blog post at the bottom of your Google My Business listing. Now the data within there is really interesting, because that can be pulled through into your actual map results, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes if you search in the map results for pizza place, or trying to think, maybe like pepperoni pizza, and you go to maps. Now, if you've got a Google My Business post that talks about your special offer on pepperoni pizza, that can actually be pulled through into that little maps result, which then can get you a higher click-through rate, more footfall to your restaurant as well. So those posts as well, again, it's another nice thing that you can be doing, just to keep your GMB listing fresh, and also to try and help get a higher click-through rate from your actual positions.
And how in depth do those posts have to be? And I asked this specifically when it comes to, you talk about responding to reviews. My personal recommendation is to give a as personal response to every single one you possibly can. And I see so many that just like, thank you for your business, control V, boom, 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 boom. Is how important is it to have some depth and uniqueness, or is that, you can be honest, like, is that like, oh no, as long as you're responding, Google's getting fed there? Is it important to kind of be unique and creative or fresh? At least don't fall into the same thing over and over, or is it all about if you're frequently doing it, that's the benefit really?
It's a great question. I think from an SEO point of view, I don't think anyone can tell you. I don't think there's any studies out there that say, the type of response that you do has any kind of impact on your GMP visibility, or your business visibility. My only answer really there would be like you say, is do it from the perception of what your customer will see. If it's a copy and paste every single time, it just doesn't look like you've put any effort into it. You're just ticking a box. Whereas, if you've put in that time and effort into it, it just looks better. But from a pure SEO point of view, I couldn't really tell you either way, to be honest.
Yeah. But in a review, right? If you were a review response, if you're putting certain words in there, would that contribute to SEO at all? So a suggestion I like to say when people ask, well, how do I personalize it? I'm like, well, you also can use an opportunity is very rarely does a customer leave a review and you reply and that person goes back and reads it over and over. Chances are the most frequent viewer of that reply to the review is a potential new customer. They want to see how you responded to the 3-star, for example, or they want to see how you responded to the 1-star, or they want to see how thankful you are about the 5-star. And I always say that's a great opportunity to say like, hey, hey, Brad, thank you so much for having us come out. We were so happy that we were able to use our water-fed pull system to give you clean, and like just throwing that phrase in there. Does that help? I mean, I think it's good for creating a response, but is there an added benefit either SEO wise or anything like that?
I don't think there's any study to ever show that. Now I know, like, if you search like pressure washer or pizza place, right? Pizza place Vancouver, and you go to the map results. Now you will see snippets of reviews being pulled in there if the keyword's mentioned. Now, I've only ever seen that from the original review, not from any review response, right? So if the original reviewer was mentioning a particular keyword, then that will be pulled through into that snippet, not so much from the response to the reviewer. And I can kind of think why. The problem with the SEO industry, if you ever worked in it, is we learn about something that works, and my God, do we really go for it until we piss Google off? Like there's been so many strategies over the year where you see, oh, this works really well for SEO. This is scalable and repeatable. We'll just do it. We'll do it. An SEO agency will do it over and over for their clients. And I think this could be one of those, right? If we found out that if we were to respond to reviews using our keywords and that gave a really positive impact, it might do. But I feel that could be something that would be really overused by SEOs and would something that would lead to the review response penalty in a year's time or something. So
but it's I'm glad to have clarification on that. Obviously the strategy of like, well, look, thank you for your business, and putting a little education is going to do the same thing. Well, then what is the non-SEO benefit? And we always say, and my personal opinion is like, again, if we talked earlier about how to market and advertise and maybe brand what you do, I guarantee if you're talking about everything you do, you'll start to get a review where someone that's not an educated customer is like, I'm so glad you came out here. That water fed pull thing is great. Like, so then it goes back to that original sort of thing. And in the end, it's all about, when people are searching, is answering the question that they're searching for. You talk about Google posts, but what about blogging in general? And I feel like a couple of years ago, it was, you have to have a social media account, but like you also need to post out a blog. And a lot of small business owners, or at least in home services, they're like, I'm not a writer, I'm not a blogger, I barely have time to fill out all my paperwork I have to do for work, let alone write a blog. But is blogging still impactful for SEO, or is it like you just kind of mentioned, was everybody blogging? Google's just kind of like, all right, not so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I think it can be just as impactful. It's just way more competitive. So I guess fundamentally, blogs are great for SEO for a number of reasons. I think that the two key reasons: one, they enable you to target customers, at other stages of the funnel, higher up in the funnel. So when they're searching, how can I get more traffic to my website? We couldn't optimize that on a product page. A new feature we've got, that talks about this and optimize that. It just doesn't work, right? We can only really optimize that via a blog, because Google will categorize that keyword as what we call an informational keyword. And typically there's two types of keywords: transactional keywords and there's informational keywords. So an informational keyword is a keyword where Google believes the intent of the searcher is to find out information about the topic they're searching for. So how to make a cup of coffee. I'm not looking to buy, I don't want to be taken to Starbucks, online store to buy, a coffee press. I want a guide on how to do that, right? So that's an informational type keyword. A transactional keyword will be an espresso machine. I don't want to find information about it. I actually just want to buy one, right? And Google will change the results based on what it thinks your intent is, or what it thinks the intent of that keyword is. So that's really important. It makes an assumption. And sometimes as an SEO, you need to do that research beforehand, because you can think a keyword's transactional, but you search it in Google, Google's just bringing up blog posts. So there's no point, you need to create a blog post, and vice versa, right? You might think a keyword's informational, and you search in Google's just bringing back loads of e-com stores or loads of products or service providers. So you need to know that. So blogs are great because, yes, you can target, these informational type queries. The problem is, compared to maybe 5 years ago, the level of competition now to rank your blog on page one for something like how to make a cup of coffee, just as an example, it is way more difficult. And as a small business owner, you need to make a decision, for that, and go, am I going to be able to invest the time? And outsource is probably the best way to do this. Find a really good content freelancer who can create a real great piece of copy. Do the research into the competitors. What kind of post do I need to create? How long has it got to be? How engaging has it got to be? What kind of topic should I be talking about, and create that blog post? It can be done. Like, it definitely can be done. It's just a bigger investment now than maybe it was a few years ago, because as you mentioned, everyone's doing it basically. The other reason though a blog post can be really good is they can help support the keywords that you really want to rank for. So let's say you want to rank for water pressure, pressure washer, Vancouver, is the keyword we're going for. Now, if you were to create a series of blog posts that talk about, pressure washers, maybe different types of pressure washers, when to use one, how to clean your building using a pressure washer, how to clean a car, all these kind of what we call long tail keywords or informational topics around pressure washer, then what you're doing is you're creating like a little mini ecosystem of showing Google you're an expert, right, in pressure washing. Mm-hmm. Now, if you interlink those carefully, what you're doing is you're funneling the value, you're funneling Google through those pages, and you're funneling the value of each of those pages, back to your primary page. And it can really help the ranking of, you then wanting to rank for pressure washer Vancouver, for example. So that's another way that works. Obviously, that doesn't require you to rank each one of those blog posts for really hard, informational type queries, but, just create blog posts then to support your main keywords. So that, that's a really good strategy that works as well. So you don't have to, you're doing it then to support your main keywords, as opposed to them being huge traffic drivers in and of their own right.
Yeah.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And blogging potentially is an opportunity. You talk about, outsourcing and hiring a copywriter or things of that nature, but there's kind of a good balance. You can have a copywriter come in, write these really good pieces, but you also can write stuff in kind of your own tone and kind of put out information. It also could be a good source to connect with non-competitors to perhaps start building a backlinking network. And for those that are unfamiliar with backlinking, I would love you to kind of get a high level for that. But I also want to talk about what makes a good backlink, because I think a lot of people think about just getting linked in some regard, but there is a bit of a hierarchy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So a backlink in its most basic form is a link, a hyperlink, I guess, real basic terms, from a website that's not yours to your website, right? So if the BBC.com write an article about, the state of SEO in 2020, 21 and they link to the Hike website, they have a little thing that says, oh, view Hike, that would be a backlink. And we'd have a backlink from, the terminology would be, we would have a backlink from the BBC website.
Okay.
Now, the reason they're important is because that passes a little bit of SEO value. So essentially, the BBC website is giving a little bit of their SEO value and passing it through to us. Mm-hmm. That's originally it was called PageRank, and that's actually what distinguished Google back in the day and made them better than all the alternatives, because they had this idea of links being important and how to categorize a website or how to rank a website. Now, like you say, not all backlinks are great, not all are bad. Not all backlinks are created equal, right? You'll have some that are great. So if I got a link from the BBC, now the reason that would be great would be, one, the BBC website is a very, very strong authoritative website, and it has a huge SEO score, right? Like, it's got loads of SEO power. So the fact that they're giving, they're linking to Hike in Google's eyes will mean that, we must be a pretty big deal in our, in our niche, right? But like, what the BBC's ranking. So that SEO value that's going through relatively will be quite a lot. Whereas imagine, a small mum and pop's business down the road, linked to the Hike website, then they're not going to pass through as much SEO value to our website. So that's one reason the BBC website, the link would be good. Another reason is because the content in which the link's placed, right? So the BBC are writing an article about the state of SEO in 2021, and then they're linking to us, and we're an SEO software. So the relevance between that piece of content on our website is so high that, again, that makes that link even more powerful, even a better link. Whereas imagine, your local mum and pop's website down the road was talking about, I don't know, like their best pizzas, and they were like, oh yeah, and by the way, go and view Hike, just, on the end of the article. Again, the contextual relevance between their website and our website isn't there. So again, Google's not going to see that link as valuable. And then we can go down the other end of the scale, which is like where you get the real dark, the real horrible backlinks, the bad backlinks. And you want to be careful with this. So if you're listening to this and you've done SEO for a few years, you've used agencies for a few years, you'll want to make sure someone's done a bit of a backlink audit. Now, one of the things that SEOs used to do back in the day is they would build these irrelevant backlinks on websites that just didn't really mean anything, but Google weren't able to really judge that. And so Google would just see you had a backlink and go, okay, great, your rankings would shoot up. Whereas Google now realized that SEOs would game that and get links on websites that were just not relevant, that were made purely for SEO, terribly written, and they would pay for these links. And then if Google then discovered you were doing that, then you would get hit. So what I mean by that is you get hit by a penalty, your rankings would drop. It'll be a horrible, horrible scenario. So yeah, there's a real scale of backlinks there in terms of like good and bad. And you want to make sure you try and build as good a backlinks as you can, and you want to clean up as many bad backlinks as you can.
And I love that we touched on this, because it's a strategy that doesn't necessarily have to be like backlink forward. So for example, you talked about, the BBC link to it is, if you're doing things within your community, being able to package that, send it out to, say, your local paper, local TV station or something like that, getting mentioned, getting linked within that, can be a backlink through there. So there, that's a mention going through, but kind of searching out, you see it every so often in a Facebook group or everything like that, people just building these random backlink pages and backlink networks. And then all of a sudden they're calling you, Andy, like, hi, I'm in a weird situation here. Can you help me? And, but I think it's good news. I don't know how much, I think there's a lot of knowledge about backlinking. They get that you're linked from another page, but I love that you talk about, the authority which it's coming from, the context and kind of which it's in, and why, just trying to get linked absolutely everywhere is probably not going to net as much as getting linked in a really good spot or kind of correctly. But then I guess it all comes back to, that's an off-page strategy. But it goes back to your on-page strategy is probably what's going to be driving the engine if you're just getting started in the online presence game and things like that. Go ahead.
Definitely focusing on page first. A good off-page can hide some, lack of good on-page, but it can only get you so far. You need to make sure that your website is well optimized, keyword researched, content's great. There's no difficulty Google crawling the website. Get those bits done first. Absolutely, those bits done first.
And I don't want you to have to name anything in particular, but there's a lot of website builders out there, the free products and things like that. We'll look on the positive side of it, because at first I was going to be like, what are some of the problems there? Because I know there's a couple out there that are just nightmares when it comes to building a site that's actually going to do what you want it to do. But say you don't have the dollar in your pocket, but you get the Google My Business absolutely free. That's a free way to start building. But you go and you're just going to get a site up just so you can have somewhere to link it to. What is your basic, I don't say your basic website build, but what are some things that you want to make sure, just from the highest level, your free level, of getting in or on your website from an SEO perspective? Because the reason I kind of want to focus on that a little bit there is a lot of people come to us because they've made website mistakes. And then once they have a convert site and they really love it and they want to go even that much further, that's when they tend to, go to a Hike SEO and things like that. And really at any point you could go to either. But that's the linear path we seem to see, because they know they need a website, and then now they have a high converting website. They want to get it found by everybody. So let's go back to that step one there. Like, okay, you don't have any dollar yet. You haven't called Andy. You haven't called myself a NiceJob yet. What do I need to put on that page just to make sure I'm getting in the game?
Yeah. So you want to make sure that whatever website that you choose, or however the route you go down, that they allow you to edit kind of your fundamental SEO elements, right? Or have included fundamental SEO elements that you can play around with, or you can amend as per, the customers you want to go for, the keywords you want to target. So you need a website builder, where you can easily update your metadata, on a page by page basis. You can easily update your H1 headings. You can easily update your images and optimize those images. You can change content. You can create blog posts really easily. They're kind of like the real fundamentals. Then you want to be able to, have a website builder where you can, that builds what we call XML sitemap. So now you kind of want to get a little bit towards the kind of the technical part of SEO. Now, people get a little bit scared when they hear technical SEO, but ultimately technical SEO, the purpose of it is to make sure that Google can crawl all of the pages you want Google to be able to crawl. And you get technical barriers when they're, a certain technical part of the website prevents that. And then there are certain elements that you can use to assist Google crawling your website. These will all be labeled under the thing of technical SEO. So you want a website builder that, creates XML sitemaps, which essentially big lists of every page on your website. So then you can send them to Google via Google Search Console. You want ones where you can add maybe specific elements like canonicals, or you can tell Google to no index certain pages that you don't want to be indexed. You want one that can easily create redirects, because sometimes you're going to create a page and later on you might not want to have that page. It might be a product that you used to sell and now you don't anymore. It might be a blog post that you've changed. For whatever reason, you want the ability to be able to redirect, hey Google, this page doesn't exist anymore. Or, hey user, this page doesn't exist anymore. This is the page that's replaced it. Go to this page instead. And that's essentially what a redirect does. So they're the kind of the technical considerations, I think, when you're looking at a web builder. Speed's a big one as well. Now, some of them are not the best at being the fastest. And page speed's a ranking factor, right? Google wants fast loading web pages. And so it gives a little bit of an SEO boost if you've got a fast loading website. And, different website builders are better and different website builders are worse at your page speed. So you want one that actually can load your content quickly, because Google will like you for that.
Yeah, and then when it comes to load speed, with that, is it, because it is, I wonder if you can help explain like what exactly that generally means, because some people, they'll be on a slow internet connection or things like that, and they're thinking it's not loading quick, but that's not necessarily the type of loading speed that we're looking for, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's just how fast it loads for Googlebot.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when Googlebot visits your website, how fast does it load for them? So what they do is obviously they visit all these websites across the world. They know, like relatively what's a fast and what's a slow-based website. So you want to be in that category of a fast-based website in Googlebot's eyes. Because like you say, if you did it on a per user level, there are so many factors. And Google can't take into consideration all those. It doesn't know all of those. So it just looks in terms of what speed you deliver to Googlebot when it tries to view your website.
Yeah, and if you heard the last little bit of that conversation and it didn't all make sense to you, at the very least, you could take what we just said there, and those are the questions that you should ask.
Yeah.
And if you're going to like a website builder, or even, hey, if you're coming to NiceJob, anything like that, like those are questions you can ask, make sure you get it. So even if you're like, all right, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to handle that technical part, you now at least have some education there to come into the conversation. Andy, I told you before we started going that I was going to be taking some notes and writing my own little things, because SEO to me, it's kind of like an organism in its own way. It's constantly evolving, and Google doesn't tell you how they've made changes to the algorithm or anything like that. So even when you think you have a full understanding of it, there's always more to learn, and I definitely did today. I'm going to have in our description and below, and in the comments, things like that, how they could find Hike SEO. But if someone said have more conversation or engage a bit more, where would you like them to go to find out or to engage with you more?
Yeah, I'd say we have our Facebook page, our Twitter page, LinkedIn, which you can find by searching Hike SEO. But if you go to our website, hikeseo.co, we've got live chat on there. So if you've got any questions, you can ask us. But a nice place is that we've got a Facebook group, a community. I know a bit like NiceJob, you guys do as well. It's called Hike SEO for Startups. And essentially, we let anyone in there that's interested in SEO. You can be a Hike user or just non-Hike user. And, we post tips about SEO for small business, setting up your SEO. We do weekly videos, weekly audits. Just if you really want to just learn about SEO from people that are there to help beginners with SEO, then that's a really great place to start.
Nice. I'll be sure to link that below as well, so you can find that. So, yeah, Andy, thank you so much for the conversation. Dropping a bunch of knowledge on us, and really, helping our understanding of SEO. But at the very least, I know for sure that people are going to feel more comfortable trying to either approach it or hire someone, and finally get some stuff that's really going to help their business. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Andy.
No worries. Thanks for your time, Sean.
And for all of you that tuned in, thank you so much as well. Feel free to like it, share it, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It's really going to help us bring more experts right to you. As always, I'm so thankful that you guys are here. I want to make sure that you're staying healthy. I want to see you're staying safe. And you don't forget to have a little fun out there as well. We'll see you next week, everybody.